The Blast from Our Past Network.
Lock your doors, close your windows, turn out your lights, for chills and thrills await you. It's time for Podcasting After Dark with your hosts, Corey Stevenson and Zach Schaefer. Stay with a friend, say your prayers as grisly ghouls close in to seal your doom. Tonight's episode is the video game review of RoboCop, Rogue City.
Dead or alive, you're coming with me, Kane. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Podcasting After Dark. I am one half of the pad team, Corey, a.k.a. Sleazy C, and I am flying solo, baby, as I review RoboCop, Rogue City, a video game that came out in 2023. You can find it on PC. You can find it on Xbox and PlayStation. I do not believe it's out for Switch, so I think it's just the main consoles. But yeah, so RoboCop, Rogue City. I picked this up a couple months ago on sale. I didn't pay full price for it, and I'm gonna kind of advocate for that right here at the top. But I'll get into it. I'll get into why and what's, good and not so good about this game. But so RoboCop Rogue City, it takes place between RoboCop 2 and RoboCop 3. So the old man is in it, but there are no robot ninjas in it. But story-wise, it takes place then. As far as the cast goes, you have Alex Murphy being played by Peter Weller. So RoboCop is actually being voiced by Peter Weller, and it looks like him. No one else voices their characters, but the characters of Sergeant Reed are in it. Ann Lewis, the old man, the mayor from RoboCop 2, and they all look fantastic. But none of them really sound like, anyone else, or sound like, they're supposed to, like you think they're going to. But Peter Weller does, RoboCop does, and obviously that is a big deal. And obviously that's sort of the main one you want to actually get right. But story-wise, like I said, it takes place between RoboCop 2 and RoboCop 3. OCP is, of course, still trying to do their thing with Delta City and, get rid of old Detroit. And, you got a lot of the typical RoboCop tropes that you've come to expect from this sort of universe. You got your corporations versus, the people on the ground, the people that get stepped on. RoboCop is sort of the champion of the people. When you're playing through the story, you have dialogue options that you can kind of, go with. You can obviously sort of be a bit more friendly to OCP, or you can be more of someone for the people. I kind of played RoboCop as sort of the ultra good guy, always looking out for the little guy type of thing, a little guy or gal. But yeah, story-wise, you got, liaisons to OCP, at the police precinct, causing bullshit to happen. You have Ann Lewis kind of gets taken out. She doesn't die, but she kind of gets incapacitated sort of at the beginning of the game. So you have this new rookie kid who is your liaison, but kind of the other cops don't trust him. They think he's been planted by OCP. So stuff like that, he kind of earns RoboCop's trust, and, character arcs you're kind of expecting and everything. RoboCop wise, you're kind of dealing with his humanity. This is cool shit. This is the kind of shit that I really enjoy, but you're sort of digging into, what is RoboCop human? Does he deserve autonomy, or is he just a tool of OCP to be used? You kind of explore that stuff. And there's actually a character that they add, a Dr. Blanche, and she does psychological evaluations on you. And these are done by, dialogue trees and stuff like that, and how you choose to answer her. She'll kind of remember that kind of stuff. But it's really cool because she's also got a prosthetic arm, a robotic arm. She talks about how she got that, and of course it's through an Ed 209 misfire. Of course, right? But yeah, so the game itself, it's not quite an action game. It's not quite like a police simulator. It's something of both. And if you ever played that Pitch Black video game where Riddick is like in the slam in the prison, it's kind of like that kind of a game where you're going around. It's first person shooter. You're not going to be seeing like the back of RoboCop. You are RoboCop, so you see it from his perspective. But you talk to different people. You talk to other police officers. You talk to civilians. You walk around. You do stuff like actual police work type of stuff, like giving tickets to cars who are parked illegally and stuff like that. But in between that, the action scenes are going to be, in your face and explosive, and you've got your auto 9mm gun that you can upgrade and stuff like that. But like story-wise, you're going to have like a hub. You're going to be either at the precinct or walking around a little part of the city doing side quests. Some of them are silly, like helping, old ladies, with their groceries or something like that, because RoboCop is still a police officer. He's supposed to be upholding the public trust. But of course, you also get into shootouts and stuff like that. So that's fun. And, so gameplay wise, it's not quite just from point A to point B, just shooting the shit out of everybody. You're uncovering cases. You're looking into things. You're trying to figure out the bigger, the big bad's story arc and all that kind of stuff. And the big bad, it's great. He is, and you learn it like early on. You like learn his name. I forgot what his last name was, but he's Emil's brother. And if you don't know who that name is, in the first RoboCop, Emil is the one that melts. He gets melted. So the big bad in this one is like sort of this kind of like a Hans Gruber-esque villain, where he's well dressed. Seems smart, capable, yada, 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 and very much kind of looks like Hans Gruber, but he is the brother of Emil, which I like that. I like that he's not like the brother of Kane or somebody, or even the brother of like, Clarence Boddicker. I like that he's the brother of somebody who wasn't maybe that smart in the first movie, and he's the older brother, and it's very interesting. I like that. So there's like this connection that Murphy has to the villain, but that's not really, I'm not gonna spoil too much story wise, and that you find out early on, and you know his name. You just, all you have to do is Google his last name and put in RoboCop, and you're like, oh, okay, it's like Arnowski or something like that. You'd be like, oh, okay, that's who it is. So they don't. It's funny because they don't come out like right out and tell you. It's like, oh, it's Emil. Why did you melt my brother? He never actually says that, but you can easily figure it out, and I think that's really cool. So you got a pretty decent story to this game, RoboCop Rogue City. As RoboCop, you're trying to get to the bottom of the larger case, but you're sort of, doing side cases as well and getting into shootouts and stuff like that. And, as far as shootouts go, like it's a lot of fun. The enemies like aren't the smartest enemies in the world. They'll still kind of stand there as they get shot, but they do try to go for cover here and there. They attempt it. It's not the best enemy AI you've ever played, against, but they're kind of disposable. And, when you do shoot them, they erupt. Like, you can blow their heads off. You can shoot their dicks off. You can shoot their arms off. And it's bloody as hell. You can pick up other guns in the world that they drop. You always start with your auto 9, that shoots the 3 shots. You can actually adjust that. I'll get that in a second. But you can pick up other things like shotguns, machine guns, Uzis, things like that. You can only hold 2 guns at the same time, your pistol, and then a secondary that you pick up. You can also pick up like health, things to, restore your health. You can also restore your health from electrical outlets by sticking your blade into them and stuff like that. As you do missions, as you accomplish things, you unlock experience, and which unlocks, skill points that you can put towards different aspects of RoboCop. You can put them towards his armor, you can put them towards his vitality, so he has more health. You can put them towards like his deductive reasoning, so like he can actually talk to people, and when you're talking to them, it will highlight the preferred response that this person's going to be looking for. So maybe you can, better, achieve whatever goals you're trying to achieve. You can, enhance your scanning and everything like that. So, there's a reason to kind of, play and beef up your RoboCop and everything, or your version of RoboCop. And you can also tweak his gun, his Auto 9. You have these different circuitry boards that you can find, and you basically load out those circuitry boards, and they do different things. Like bullets can ricochet. They can actually increase the gore effect of, like, when you shoot people, just more blood sort of erupts out of them. Some of them can like split the bullets up. Some of them like make it so you don't have to actually reload. So it's really, there's a lot of depth to modifying your weapon, your gun. And for the most part, honestly, I used that. I used his pistol for the most part. But there were times when you need something a bit stronger, There's interesting little, sort of diversionary things that you can do. So, for example, there's one mission where there's a bank robbery in progress, and you go in with a group of, Detroit SWAT team members, and you basically are in competition with them of who can kill more bad guys in the stage. And later on, the same thing happens with an Ed 209 unit, and you have to follow him into this like hostile, refinery place, and it tallies if the Ed 209 is killing more than you are, and if you win these competitions, you just get more skill points and gives you more points to put towards your RoboCop, like I said. One of the really cool moments in the game, it's kind of a spoiler, but at the same time, I'm pretty sure you can expect this to happen. But about halfway through the game, you have to fight a defective Ed 209. He destroys the police officer handler that he has. And then you have to actually fight that Ed 209. And it is as difficult and rewarding as you would expect. I mean, it took me a lot of, tries to defeat it, but it was a lot of fun. You got to shoot the front paneling, and, pieces break off. You can destroy parts of it and stuff like that, but it's also just as difficult as you would expect, to be fighting in Ed 209. And also, too, like, the sense of scale with it, that Ed 209 is big, but man, until you're like staring face to face with it, and RoboCop's big too, it's like, holy shit, like these things are pretty big. There's a lot of references to RoboCop 2. There's Nuke is everywhere. You can pick that up and kind of like, you have to pick up evidence and things. And that's just kind of like little, things to pick up in the environment. You pick up like fake money, fake wallets, nuke capsules and stuff like that. And that just kind of adds to your XP, and if you file it under, you're doing police work, but really it just gives you a reason to sort of explore the environments. One thing that the graphics are good. They're not great, but they're definitely serviceable. I mean, they get RoboCop right. They get Ed 209 right. They get the look and feel of the environment of the world that the RoboCop movies sort of have created. And it also, of course, has, like a late 80s, early 90s-ish feel to it. There's stuff like the SUX 3000 car is in it. None of the cars look, too modern. They look of the time. The police cruisers look like the Ford Taurus, of the late 80s. So, they really got all of that correct, and like I said, like Sergeant Reed looks exactly like the actor. Ann Lewis looks exactly like her. The other characters that aren't sort of, based on the likeness of like sort of a known actor, they're not quite as good, but they're still like serviceable. Like I said, it's all, the graphics are decent throughout the entire game, but there were some graphical glitches that I encountered. I'm playing this on the PS5, just so you all know. But the main one was during the cutscenes, the camera would go back and forth between RoboCop and who he's, talking to. And every time the camera switched, there was like this split nanosecond of the character models just like being all pixelated and weird looking, and they kind of pop into, existence. But I mean, it's literally a nanosecond, but it's every single time the camera switches. So, like if there's a back and forth between RoboCop and, Ann Lewis, and there's, say in the course of a, 2-minute conversation, there's maybe like 4 or 5 cuts back and forth. Expect every single one of those cuts to have a graphical glitch as it pops in. There's no real graphical glitches when you're playing the game. It's only during the cutscenes that I noticed that. But it's, I think this is a budget production, it's made by the development team is Teyon. The only other video game that I know that they did was that Terminator Salvation game, which was obviously a movie license game like this one, but it got decent reviews. Not great, but decent, more so than you would ever expect for, a Terminator licensed video game, which are notoriously just bad to begin with. But so I can see why they got this job. But this one got, decent reviews and everything. I think this one got better reviews than that Terminator Salvation game did. So, like I'm okay with overlooking stuff like that. Like, I get it, like it's not a AAA video game title. So I kind of understand what I'm getting out of it, which is also why I kind of advocate to, buy it on the cheap. I know, I guess that probably doesn't really help the development team, but I think, I don't think that this game is really like a $60 game. It's definitely more in the $25 to $30 range. I wouldn't really pay more than that, but I'm having a great time with it. I think the biggest thing that the game does right is that it gets RoboCop right. And you're like, well, that's a no-brainer, but like, there's so many subtle things, like the way he moves, the way they sort of, in the cutscene, sort of, frame him, the way he like looks and everything. They get all of that so right. And of course, Peter Weller's voice is just like the icing on the cake. But like, I got such a kick out of, playing as RoboCop and deciding how I wanted to sort of handle some of these situations. And, like I said, someone who, you guys know, like I saw RoboCop in the theater when I was a kid. I think I was like 9 or something when it came out. So, like RoboCop's been in my life forever. I love RoboCop 2. I'm a big fan of that movie. I enjoyed the video games. I had the toys. And by video games, I mean the RoboCop versus Terminator game was fantastic. I had, some comic books back in the day. So I like RoboCop. I've always liked RoboCop. Actually, my first movie poster that I ever purchased for my wall, my room, was RoboCop, the RoboCop poster. I think I was like 10 years old. And I remember that was, for me, it was a big deal because that was like the first time that I got to sort of have something that I chose to put on my wall, like, as a kid, you grow up and you kind of have whatever's on the walls, what your parents sort of, I guess, bought for you. And I remember I had this big like poster of all these cars and stuff, but I was never really a car kid. So this was like the first time that I could put up something that I was like, oh man, this is showing off what I love. So I've always loved RoboCop, and this really gives you that sense of being him. Now, like I said, you can play him differently, as far as like your responses to people go and everything, but I kind of played him as like super moral, super like looking out for the little guy, and like not not being a shill, like a corporate shill, like it's so, but you can play him the other way if you want to. And, like it's, in the game, in the story of the game, there's like the election is coming. One guy is one of the, the one mayor, electoral mayor, he wants to get elected. He is very like pro OCP. So you're like, okay, so he's the bad guy, but he's also very pro letting Alex Murphy be autonomous. So you're like, oh, okay, so maybe I should kind of support him. But then the mayor from RoboCop 2, he kind of, he doesn't really treat you like a person, but at the same time, he's very much for the people of the city. So, you're kind of like, oh, it's kind of a little bit gray and morally ambiguous. And, who should I sort of, endorse? Because there's like a big deal of like, who is RoboCop going to endorse? And it's all going to play out however, you sort of want it to play out. And I don't want to give spoilers on the story and like how it ends or anything like that. So, but I like all that kind of shit. Like that's interesting stuff for me, even if, it's not entirely, fleshed out. I like that they're trying. I like that they're really trying to tap into the humanity of RoboCop. I like that they're trying to tap into what RoboCop means to the city, and not just as a tool, but maybe as a person as well. I like that people seem, some characters in the game actually genuinely care about RoboCop as a person versus just being a tool. Obviously, there's a lot of people that do, look at him as a tool and everything. And, like these psychological evaluations with Murphy, it's not like long or anything. It's not like, oh God, I'm going to be sitting here for like 30 minutes, trying to get into his head. They're short and sweet, but they offer some insight into the character that you get a taste of in the movies as well, but I think they do a good job of just expanding that here. But obviously if you want just the action and the violence, it has that in spades as well. You're going to be fighting everybody from like low-level thugs to, inmates in a prison to like these mercenaries that are kind of like OCP mercenaries, and they're in all white. And if you've ever read the RoboCop comic book that was an adaptation of Frank Miller's RoboCop 2 script, if you've ever read the comic, you'll actually see that they're wearing all white in that as well. And if you haven't read the comic, you can actually go and listen to Talking Back. I was on the episode with them, but they did a review of that RoboCop comic, and they talked about all the kind of differences with the movie and all that kind of stuff. But it's really cool. It's a really, really cool comic book. So you can look it up. It's like, I think you can find it on Amazon, Frank Miller's RoboCop. And the art's really good in it. But like, I believe those guys wearing the white armor is an homage to that comic book. I could be wrong, could just be a design aesthetic, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was actually an homage. But yeah, so like gameplay wise, it's a fun game. You're always, moving along and doing something, and it never feels boring to do the police work stuff. Like, I actually really enjoy that. You're like walking around a little section of the city, you're scanning things. You can, like I said, you can see like if a car is parked illegally, or their meter is run out and they haven't put any coins in it. You can issue them a citation, and it just gives you a little bit of XP, which of course will unlock more points for you to spend on your RoboCop. There's a new Game Plus mode when you beat the game. You can keep all your stats and stuff like that and play it again. But yeah, gameplay-wise, it's fun. The shooting is always fun, even if the enemies aren't the smartest around, but it's still fun to just fucking destroy them and shoot their arms off. You can slow down time and shoot their dicks off and everything. Of course you can, You can also upgrade like RoboCop, give him like a dash where he can kind of move quickly from, forward and back and stuff like that. He can punch people. He can grab them and throw them. You can use them as shields. You can pull up like a mini shield around you to absorb some of the damage. You can like have this like stun effect. If you're close to the guys, you can stun them and they'll be all blind. Basically just emit like this flash from your body. So there's all the kinds of things to like help mix up the fighting, with RoboCop and everything. And it's fun. It's great. I really enjoy that. Like I said, the graphics are decent. They get the job done. Some character models look better than others, but RoboCop looks great. And really, that's what matters. The pistol looks great. The sound of the pistol is spot on. Every step you take, I'll be watching you. No, I'm just kidding. Every step you take sounds like RoboCop. As he's walking, it's spot on, and it never goes away. So as you're walking, you're constantly hearing that. But it's just like, I feel like RoboCop. And even when you leave the precinct to go out and do a mission, you have to go down to the garage, get in your car, and of course he hits that ramp at top speed and sends out the sparks behind him. So it's all this little stuff that makes you appreciate that you're playing a RoboCop game. It feels like a RoboCop game, and that's honestly the highest compliment I can give it. But again, like I said, it is kind of a budget title, so I don't think it's not a AAA, game. Like, don't expect perfect graphics, don't expect no glitches, so that's why I kind of say, if you can find it for $25, $30, don't spend any more than 30 on it. Just seriously, don't. I think you'll be a little bit more upset by the graphical glitches and everything if that were the case. But I think if you spend 20, 25, I think you'll be like, okay, I can swallow some of these, glitches and, not quite the best voice acting. And, sometimes during the cutscenes, the characters, heads aren't tracking correctly and stuff like that. And even, and I hope you don't get that graphic glitch in between camera shots. I hope that's, I don't know. I mean, I'm playing on a PS5. I can only imagine it's been supported, for PS5. So if it's glitching on mine like that, I can only imagine it's glitching on the Xbox and the PS4. So I don't know. But yeah, if you're a RoboCop fan, this is a no-brainer. I think you're going to dig it. And, the action is fun and everything, and you can adjust the difficulty levels. So if you're just, if you're not really a hardcore gamer, you can, make it a little bit easier, take more damage, so you can just kind of get through it and get through the story, and I think you'll enjoy it. If you're a RoboCop fan, you're going to get much more out of it than if you're just like, I've never seen RoboCop before, but I want an action shooter police simulator. Well, I don't know if you have any really other options to choose from for that category. But I also don't think, if you're not a RoboCop fan, I don't know if this is like the entry point that, you want to go into the franchise. It's a love letter to RoboCop. It's a love letter to at least the first two. I've only seen part 3 once in the theater, and I fucking hated it. I was like, what is this garbage? So if there are references to part 3, I don't, really know them. But I do remember the old man is, I think, dead at the beginning of part 3, and he's alive here. So I don't even, like, part 3 hasn't even happened yet. So I don't know how much, like, homage that they're going to actually be able to play to it if it hasn't even happened. But all that's to say, if RoboCop 3 is your favorite entry in the series, well, may God have mercy on your soul. But go check this out. Go check out RoboCop Rogue City. I enjoy it. I don't know if I'll play it again after I beat it, but I very much, have enjoyed my time with it. So that's kind of where I land. You got to be a fan of this one, I think. You got to be a fan of RoboCop to really enjoy this one. And I am. And I did. So there you go. Knowing's half the battle. G.I. Joe and all that jazz. So thank you guys for listening to these silly video game reviews. We were going to actually, Zach and I were actually going to have an interview drop today. But we kind of got stood up by the person. I'm not going to call them out or anything like that, but that's why I kind of like have these in my back pocket, these solo reviews in my back pocket. And I figured, RoboCop, it's an 80s property. It's an 80s franchise property, and the game does a great job of kind of conveying that era. So I figured you guys might dig it. So yeah, check it out. And of course, check us out on Patreon if you like what we do. We have a whole series over there called Auteur de Force. It's for the $5 tier. And basically, Zach and I walked through an auteur's filmography from beginning to end. We did it with John Carpenter, and that was like 2 years and like a couple months worth. So it was a long time. And now we are doing Don Coscarelli's filmography, and we're about almost halfway through it because his filmography is not as extensive. But we are up to Survival Quest. So by the time you listen to this, Survival Quest will be dropping in a few weeks. But you can hear Phantasm 2 right now. Yes, we reviewed Phantasm 2 proper, but we also cover it on the Coscarelli Factor because, we talk about how it sort of fits into the overall, filmography, is the auteur's filmography. So we did that with John Carpenter, even though we've covered, his movies proper, like The Thing and Prince of Darkness. We still recovered them and where they fit in the filmography. So go check that out, Patreon. We know money is tight, so a free way to help out the show is just leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. You can also just tell a friend about us and, kind of share the love. But if you want to also spend a little bit, but not a monthly fee, we have a merch store. You can pick up a t-shirt that helps support us. So you can find all the links for the Patreon. You can find all the links for the merch store and the podcatchers and how to contact us. You can find everything on our website, and that's podcastingafterdark.com. Again, that's podcastingafterdark.com, and make sure you check out everything on the BFOP network. Talking Back, Action, Throwback Trivia Takedown. You can find all of that over at bfopnetwork.com. Return, Revenge, Resurrection, another one of my favorites. So yeah, go check them all out at bfopnetwork.com. That's bfopnetwork.com. And as always, we'll catch you on the dark side. Was that a good Alex Murphy for you guys?
Be sure to subscribe to Podcasting After Dark and give us a 5-star rating on iTunes. Support Podcasting After Dark on Patreon. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Podcasting After Dark. And visit us next time for another installment of Podcasting After Dark with Corey Stevenson and Zach Schaefer.